So fellas, we're back to everyone's favourite place, Canada, this week for Reiner De Ridder versus Brendan Allen. And I'm now 0-1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on the last 6 main events in the UFC. I'm desperate to get one right. Obviously, we were supposed to have Hernandez versus De Ridder. That's pulled out. We've now got Brendan Allen. But you know what? I don't think the card's that bad. If I had to rate this card overall, I think for a Canada card for a fight night, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Obviously, the main event is the issue with this card. It would have been good to see Hernandez versus De Ridder, but there's a lot of good fights in there. Vera versus Zahabi, Kevin Holland on the card against Mike Mallet, a couple of bangers on the prelims too. So for a fight night card, I think this is a solid one, especially for Canada. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, but we're going to break for every fighter on the card, predict every fight on the card, and we'll start off with Stephanie Luciano versus Ravena Oliveira. Now, Stephanie Luciano, good, nice little run in the regional scene, becoming a champion. Comes over and gets a draw on the Contender Series. Debuts against who she drew on the Contender Series, gets the win, and lost her most recent fight against Sam Hughes as she takes on Ravena Oliveira, who was a 100% finishing rate in MMA, finished every single fight in the regional suite, becoming a champion, lost her UFC debut by decision. The style of Stephanie Luciano, she's really long for the division. She actually uses her range. I've been impressed so far with Stephanie Luciano. She's quite a long, rangy striker, pretty solid kickboxer as well for the UFC, and she actually uses her range effectively. Rather than getting in the pocket and brawling, she uses her range pretty effectively, and she's a solid kickboxer. She's still green, you know, she got worked by Sam Hughes, but she's still a pretty solid kickboxer. She's got a bit of potential. Ravena Oliveira, she looked like a dangerous striker on the regional scene. Like I said, 100% finishing rate. It looked like she was throwing bombs. Didn't really impress in a UFC debut, though. I'm going to go with Luciano to win this one by decision. Yeah, she didn't impress me against Lisboa, did Ravena Oliveira in a UFC debut, even though obviously Lisboa's a decent striker. Didn't impress me at all, and I think she's going to lose for the same reason. I see Stephanie Luciano, her range being too much. I can see her just picking apart Ravena Oliveira. I feel like Ravena Oliveira is kind of like a regional warrior, and like I said, she hasn't looked bad in the UFC. Stephanie Luciano beat Talita Alencar pretty comfortably, and even against Sam Hughes in your second fight ain't an easy thing because Sam Hughes is a dog. She even made it close against Sam Hughes. That should have been a draw in my opinion, so I'm going to go Stephanie Luciano by decision. I just think she's the better striker. I don't see Ravena Oliveira, doing too much to Stephanie Luciano. She hasn't really impressed me so far in the UFC, so should be a fairly just an average women MMA fight, but I'm going to go Luciano by decision, picks her apart with the range, and gets the job done. We've also got another women MMA fight, Melissa Croden making a UFC debut against Tainara Lisboa. Now, Tainara Lisboa actually fought Valentina Shevchenko in kickboxing and Muay Thai years back in 2010, but in terms of MMA, she had a decent little run in the regional scene, got a finish in her UFC debut, and then so far she's 1-1 since that, getting smashed to pieces by Luana Santos in the most recent fight as she takes on Melissa Croden, who's also had a nice run in the regional scene, becoming a champion, comes over after LFA, and she's now making a UFC debut against Tainara Lisboa. Now, the style of Melissa Croden, she's a fun, swingy striker who's had a few dogfights on the regional scene. She's nothing crazy. From what I've seen in the regional scene, she's got a decent durability across 15 minutes. She doesn't gas out too quick, and she's just one of these kind of dogfighters. Swings for the fences, looks to make it a scrap. That's kind of the style of Melissa Croden. And Tainara Lisboa, I mean, she's very out-grappleable. She got dominated by Luana Santos in the most recent fight, and obviously kickboxing is her background. She kind of struggles with grappling, and she's fought Shevchenko years back. So she's one of these classic Muay Thai strikers, and she's looked pretty solid striking so far as well. So I'm going to go with Tainara Lisboa to get this one done by decision. Yeah, Melissa Croden just seems like the UFC's desperate cry to fill up this card with Canadians. So they've brought over a 6-2 Canadian women MMA fighter from the regional scene. I mean, she lost to Cavalcanti on the regional scene as well, who's now in the UFC. I'm just going to go Lisboa by decision. Lisboa, obviously grappling's her biggest weakness, but striking, like I said, she's not that bad. She's, previous to her most recent loss against Luana Santos, she was 7-2 in MMA. She got 2 wins in the UFC as well. Fought Shevchenko years ago, experienced Muay Thai striker. She is a pretty solid striker as Lisboa, so I see her picking apart Melissa Croden. Like I said, Melissa Croden's kind of one of these swingy dogfighters, doesn't really look the most technically sound as well. She's lost in stand-up fights on the regional scene too, so I think Tainara Lisboa gets this one done. I'm going to go Lisboa to get this one done by decision. Then we've got Danny Barlow making his middleweight debut against Jourdain Santos. Now, Danny Barlow, undefeated running the regional scene, becoming a champion, gets a good finish on the Contender Series, good finish in his UFC debut. Gets a decision win over Nikolai Veretennikov and just got knocked out by Sam Patterson in his most recent fight in the UFC as he takes on Jourdain Santos, who had a nice run in the regional scene, becoming a champion, came from the Contender Series and then lost his UFC debut to Ozzy Diaz at UFC 313. Now, the style of Danny Barlow, he's a technical kickboxer with some power, but he isn't anything crazy. He was kind of a bit of an undefeated, I guess, prospect in the welterweight division. He was like a technical kickboxer. He did have pretty heavy hands, but he hasn't really beaten anybody good, and he's potentially got a bit of a dodgy chin, and I say that because, listen, Sam Patterson is now on a 4-fight 4-fight winning streak or by way of finish, but Sam Patterson's never really been the best striker. I guess now that he's on a 4-fight finishing streak, it's bad to say that, but he got clipped pretty easily and finished by Sam Patterson with the first big shot that Patterson landed, so potentially a dodgy chin, too early to say. And Jourdain Santos, he's a fun boxer made for dogfights, but by no means has great striking. He fought Aussie Diaz at UFC 313. It was an amazing fight, could have got fight of the night, but it was also one of the lowest level fights I've seen. I mean, if you're losing to Aussie Diaz, I did think Jourdain Santos should have won that fight, but if you're losing to Aussie Diaz, it's not the best look. And he's a long and rangy, well, he's long and rangy. Doesn't really use it well, though. Like I said, he likes these kind of in-the-pocket boxing scraps like he did against Aussie Diaz. I'm going to go with Danny Barlow to get this one done by decision. Yeah, Danny Barlow is talented on the feet. He lost to Sam Patterson, but even in the fight with Sam Patterson, he did clip him at some point and nearly wobble Sam Patterson. He's got 2 other wins in the UFC against lower-level guys, but yeah, I'm going to go with Danny Barlow to win this one. I'm not picking a guy that lost to Aussie Diaz against a former welterweight prospect. I don't think Danny Barlow's anything crazy. Like I said, getting knocked out by Sam Patterson, Patterson's not the best, and he hasn't beaten anybody good, but he has got a good technical kickboxing base. I could even see him getting a finish in this fight against Jourdain Santos, because like I said, Santos got caught a lot by Aussie Diaz, who's one of the lowest level guys on the roster. If you're getting caught by Aussie Diaz, I think Danny Barlow's going to be able to pick you apart. I think he's a better striker than Jourdain Santos, more technical than Jourdain Santos, probably more dangerous than Jourdain Santos too, so I'm going to go Danny Barlow to get the job done by decision. Obviously, he's moving up to the middleweight division. We don't really know how he looks in this division, but I'm assuming that he looks pretty similar to welterweight. I don't think there's going to be too much difference. I'm going to go Danny Barlow to get the job done by decision, outstrikes, outlands Jourdain Santos, gets the job done. Then we've got Kyle Prepolec returning to the UFC against Drew Dober. Random matchmaking, but it's going to be interesting to see. Now, Kyle Prepolec, I guess a bit of an up and down run in the regional scene, becoming a champion, also losing to Kevin Lee on the regional scene too. He then loses his first 2 fights in the UFC till he gets cut from the UFC, then goes 1-1 in his next couple of fights, becoming a champion on the local scene again, and then goes over to PFL, gets 2 finishes in PFL, and then comes back against Benoit Saint-Denis on short notice at UFC 315, gets finished by Benoit Saint-Denis, and now he's returning against Drew Dober. Drew Dober, decent run in the regional scene, comes from the Ultimate Fighter, ends up losing on the Ultimate Fighter, so he goes back to the regional scene, picks up a few wins, goes to the Ultimate Fighter again, loses again on the Ultimate Fighter, and since then he's been in the UFC for ages. He's a bit of a veteran. He's Drew Dober. He's been in the UFC since 2013, and he's been in so many different highlight reels. He's had notable losses to the likes of Islam Makhachev himself, been submitted by Beneil Dariush, he's been beaten by Gene Silva, beaten by Marcano. He's also got a few notable wins, knocked out Bobby Green in a massive comeback victory, finished Terrence McKinney, got a good finish over Alexander Hernandez too, and he's now on a 3-fight losing streak as he's just been knocked out by Manuel Torres. The style of Kyle Prepolec, he's surprisingly accurate, is Kyle Prepolec. Like I said, he got 2 good finishes in PFL, and even in the fight with Benoit Saint-Denis, BSD's a beast, and he actually landed a few shots on Benoit Saint-Denis. He was able to survive until the second round on short notice. He isn't really UFC level, but he is pretty much a lab rat to test Drew Dober respectfully. I don't think Kyle Prepolec's UFC level. He's 0-3 in the UFC, and he's just been brutalized by Benoit Saint-Denis, so I don't really think he's UFC level. He didn't look great against BSD either. Granted, it was against Benoit Saint-Denis. So I just don't really think he's UFC level, but seems pretty accurate, and I guess he's got decent striking. Drew Dober, he's a hard-hitting puncher who's always in dogfights, but his chin doesn't hold up. Yeah, Drew Dober's like a human highlight reel in the sense that he's either going to clip someone with that left hook, because he's got a really dangerous left hook and he's super powerful, or he's going to get knocked out himself. He's kind of got a weak chin, but a powerful left hook as well. Dangerous fighter, but too vulnerable too. And he weirdly struggles against Caucasian men, which seems to be a bit of a theme with Drew Dober. He ends up struggling a lot with Caucasian men. I'm going to go with Drew Dober by TKO in the first round. If Drew Dober loses this is kind of got to be the end of Drew Dober. He's lost 4 of his last 5, 3 of them by finish. If he loses to Kyle Prepolec, who's, like I said, a bit of a UFC lab rat, it's going to be a bad look for Drew Dober, but I'm going to pick him to win. Drew Dober is a very heavy-handed guy. He's knocked out good strikers before. He knocked out Hernandez, he knocked out Bobby Green, he's knocked out McKinney. He's looked decent in fights as well. He was pretty dribble in the fight with Gene Silva as well. He didn't get finished by Gene Silva, and he's only really been, he's only recently been losing to some pretty solid guys. So I'm going to go with Drew Dober by TKO. I think he clips Kyle Prepolec early on. I think he's a better striker. I think he's more dangerous. He's obviously been fighting at a higher level, so I'm going to go Dober by TKO, clips Kyle Prepolec, gets the ground and pound finish early on. I'm going to go Drew Dober by finish. But if Kyle Prepolec can pull this off, then, I mean, fair play to Kyle Prepolec, but I think this is an indicator of how washed Drew Dober is. Even for me, if Drew Dober goes to like a close decision, it's a really bad look for Drew Dober. This guy was in the top 15 a year and a half ago, so I'm expecting him to blast through Kyle Prepolec, knock him out early on, but we'll have to see. But I'm going to go Drew Dober by TKO in the first round. Then we have Cody Gibson versus Aoriqileng. Now, Cody Gibson, kind of a decent one of the regional scene. has a UFC run back in 2014, losing to Aljamain Sterling, but ends up going 1-3 on that run. So he goes back to the regional scene, becomes a champion, also ends up losing to Ray Borg and beating John Dodson, like I said, becoming a champion. Then comes from the Ultimate Fighter, McGregor versus Chandler, ends up winning his first 2 fights in the Ultimate Fighter, ends up losing the finale to Brad Katona, but they keep him in the UFC anyway, and so far in the UFC he's 2-2, getting a good finish over Brian Kelleher, and getting finished by Damon Blackshear in his most recent fight back in March. He takes on Aoriqileng, who's had a massive run in the regional scene, also ended up losing to Kai Kara France regionally as well. And so far in the UFC, well, he starts off his UFC career going 0-2 in his first couple of fights, and since then he's gone 3-2 with a no contest as well. Also notably getting knocked out by Aiemann Zahabi and picking up a good win over Cameron Else, losing his most recent fight to Raul Rosas Jr. The style of Cody Gibson, he's a low-level fighter because of his fight IQ. Yeah, Cody Gibson's got pretty bad fight IQ, and his most recent fight with Damon Blackshear, who was actually tagging Blackshear a lot, and then he decides to shoot a takedown, which leads to him getting submitted. So he has got bad fight IQ. He actually has pretty nice hands, though. He's a bit of a dogfighter, is Cody Gibson. He likes engaging his scraps, but he has actually got decent hands. Showed it on the Ultimate Fighter, showed it against Brad Katona. Like I said, just against Damon Blackshear too, so he has got nice hands as Cody Gibson. The style of Aoriqileng, he also lacks fight IQ. He's also one of these guys that will piece you up on the feet and then shoot a takedown like he did with Raul Rosas Jr. He's essentially just an average striker with not much danger in his hands. You know, he's not a powerful guy, he's not a dangerous guy, a bit of a decision merchant. He's just an average level striker. He'll beat the people who can't strike, he'll lose the people who can strike, that type of guy. I'm going to go with Cody Gibson by decision. Now, there was a time when I thought Cody Gibson might be the worst fighter in the UFC after he lost to Miles Jones, but you know what? He hasn't looked too bad in his last couple of fights. On the Ultimate Fight, when he lost to Brad Katona, that was a very, very close fight. Like I said, he's got decent hands. He's a scrappy guy. He's had a decent run in the regional scene. He's a veteran of the sport as well. And he's got some decent wins. Well, I'd say decent wins. He's looked good against Brian Kelleher, Chad Anheliger too. And like I said, the most recent fight with Damon Blackshear, he didn't look bad on the feet against Damon Blackshear either. So even though I don't think Cody Gibson's anything special and he's still going to be a low-level fighter, I'm going to pick him to win this one. I think he works Aoriqileng on the feet. Aoriqileng, like I said, he lost to Raul Rosas Jr. recently, and his fight IQ was appalling in that fight. And I say recently, that was all the way back at UFC 306 in September of last year. So he's been inactive too. So I'm going to go Cody Gibson by decision. They're pretty evenly matched. Two lower level strikers in the bantamweight division, but I think Gibson, he's obviously been more active, and I just think he's a better striker than Aoriqileng, and he's been, like I said, a lot more active too. So I'm going to go Cody Gibson by decision. Then we've got Azamat Bekoev versus Yousri Belgaroui making his UFC debut. Now, Azamat Bekoev, he had a nice run on the regional scene, becoming a champion over in LFA. Debuts on short notice against Zachary Reese, absolutely batters Zachary Reese, and then he ends up knocking out Ryan Lauder in his next fight in the UFC. He also has one of the best Twitter accounts in the UFC as well, does Azamat Bekoev. He takes on Yousri Belgaroui. Now, Yousri comes from a massive kickboxing background, notably losing to Alex Pereira twice and Adesanya twice over at kickboxing. Obviously comes from Glory Kickboxing himself. He's got this big kickboxing background. He also now trains with Alex Pereira. You might have seen him in the corner of Poeton in some of Poeton's fights. And so far in MMA, he's had a couple of good wins in MMA, a couple of good finishes. Comes over to the Contender Series, actually loses on the Contender Series the first time around to Marco Tulio. Ends up picking up 2 more wins on the regional scene, becoming a champion, and he just got a good finish on the Contender Series in his most recent fight in MMA. The style of Azamat Bekoev. Bekoev is a powerful puncher. He kind of reminds me of Ikram Aliskerov. He's one of these swingy, brawly fighters on the feet with good accuracy. He might not be the fastest, but he has got power in his hands. He's got good brawling, kind of a brawling style, and he has got good accuracy. He's also got solid takedown offense that he showed against Ryan Lauder, and he's got nasty ground and pound. He absolutely punted Zachary Reese's head through the canvas when there fought. So decent takedown offense, pretty well-rounded guy. Yousri Belgaroui, he's obviously a lanky kickboxer, a bit at the top in kickboxing. You know, like I said, former Glory Kickboxing guy. He's faced Adesanya twice and Poeton twice in kickboxing. Big guy for the division, but he hasn't really looked impressive on the Contender Series. I don't want to call him a prospect. People have compared him to Blood Diamond, like the Poeton's version of Blood Diamond. He hasn't really looked impressive on the Contender Series. Essentially, he's a big, tough striker, but he's still untested in MMA. I'm going to go with Azamat Bekoev by TK on the second round. Yeah, Bekoev's legit. Yousri Belgaroui, I'm still not entirely sure if he's UFC worthy. Just because he's fought Poeton and Adesanya in kickboxing, he now hangs around Poeton, that don't mean I'm going to pick him. He's already lost 3 times in MMA as well, one of them being on the Contender Series. So I'm going to go Bekoev to win this fight. I don't see what Bekoev can't do to Yousri Belgaroui that Marco Tulio on the Contender Series couldn't do. I think Bekoev's going to take him down early and smash him to pieces. I mean, we've seen Bekoev at least all over in LFA with decent grappling. We're some against Zachary Reese. You know, he took Zachary Reese to the mat and put his head in. So I think he does the same in this fight against Yousri. Yousri, pretty untested in MMA. He's been out grappled before in MMA too. Even when he was on the Contender Series, he had it was a bit of an eye poke submission too, so I'm going to go Bekoev by TKO in the second. I think he takes down Yousri Belgaroui pretty quickly, smashes him to pieces. I'm going to go for a second round TKO just from the amount of damage they've done. Bekoev by TKO, even if the fight stays standing. From what I've seen in MMA, Bekoev's the more impressive striker in MMA. Belgaroui didn't look good in the Contender Series. Bekoev's got 2 finishes in the UFC so far, 2 brutal KOs, and a winning streak over in LFA, so I'm going to go up Bekoev, more experienced, way better grappler, looks to be better overall in MMA. I'm going to go Bekoev by TKO in the second round. Then we've got Jourdain versus David Grant, which should be a banger in the bantamweight division. Now, Jourdain had a nice run in the regional scene, becoming a champion, and so far in the UFC, he's had quite a big run, bit of a streaky fighter, a win 2, lose 2, win 2, lose 2, but in his most recent fight, he's moved down to the bantamweight division and got a good finish over Victor Henry. Also a bit of an edgelord on social media. He kind of likes to post this kind of controversial stuff. There's Jourdain, a bit of an edgelord. David Grant, he had a regional scene, a massive regional, well, not a massive regional scene, but it's been ages ago since he was on the regional scene, ended up becoming a champion. Comes to on the Ultimate Fighter, Rousey versus Tate. Ends up going 2-1 on the Ultimate Fighter. Debuts against Marlon Vera, actually beats Marlon Vera in his UFC debut. After that, he loses his next 2 fights by finish. Picks up a 3-fight winning streak, including 2 good finishes, one of them being over Jonathan Martinez himself. Then rematches Marlon Vera, loses a decision. Then gets robbed against Adrian Yanez. And then since then, he's gone 4-1 with one of the most brutal robberies in there against Daniel Marcos, which was a brutal robbery. That's one of the worst robberies of 2023. And 2 good finishes as well on that run as well. The style of Jourdain, he's a really fun, crafty kickboxer who historically does dumb shit to lower his chances. Yeah, there was once a time when Jourdain was a bit of a prospect, one of Canada's best prospects in the featherweight division. He's one of the kind of fun, unique, crafty kickboxers, does really well at mixing the hands with the kicking, and he's always in fun fights, he's Jourdain. Even though he might not be the most consistent, he's usually in fun fights, but he does do a lot of dumb shit in his fights to kind of lower his chances of winning. David Grant, he's the goated veteran. If there was like a pound for pound list of veterans in the UFC, I think David Grant might be in the top 3. He's a scrappy, durable, high volume striker with really effective kickboxing. He's facing these younger guys at his big age, and he's working them, man. He's a scrappy, durable kickboxing. He's great at mixing body shots to the head. He'll crack you to the body, then land one up top. He did that to Jonathan Martinez. He went for a body shot, landed with the left hook, knocked him out. He did it a lot against Damon Blackshear too. David Grant's one of the best unranked bantamweights there is right now, especially at his age. And I'm going to go with David Grant to win this one by decision. I think Grant is one of the most underrated guys. And I say that because it's not just his wins, it's also his losses. This guy lost to Marlon Vera in a very, well, not a very close fight, but he made Marlon Vera work a couple of years back. Arguably beat Adrian Yanez when Yanez was in his prime on the rise as well. Got robbed against Daniel Marcos. You look at all of his big losses, does David Grant, there's an argument that he can win those fights, and he's losing them to legit guys. And all of his wins, he's absolutely working everybody he wins. He's a powerful guy on the feet, great combinations, great kickboxer, durable too. And I think Jourdain, he's just too inconsistent for me. I mean, he's now moving down to the bantamweight division, and I mean, he got a good finish over Victor Henry, but I just don't see a world where, I mean, I can definitely see a world where Jourdain wins this one, but I just rate David Grant more. I think he's one of the best unranked bantamweights there is. He's got the momentum. He's been active recently as well, so I'm going to go David Grant by decision. Should be a scrap, should be a banger, should be an absolute dogfight between the two of them. I think Jourdain is going to get going with the kicks and David Grant's going to get going with the boxing combinations, but I'm going to go with the veteran David Grant to get this one done, and hopefully whoever does win this fight can get someone in the top 15 at bantamweight, because I think they would have earned it, especially David Grant as well. If he beats Jourdain, giving someone in the top 15, especially at his big age, it'd be impressive, but I'm going to go David Grant by decision. Then we've got Bruno Silva versus Hyung Park. Now, Bruno Silva, nice run on the regional scene, comes through on the Ultimate Fighter, ends up going 1-1 on the Ultimate Fighter, then goes back to the regional scene, ends up becoming a champion, goes to the UFC, ends up losing 2 of his first 3 fights in the UFC, and since then, after that, he goes on quite a big winning streak with 4 straight finishes in the UFC, and then he ends up getting smoked by Manel Cap, and then he ends up getting finished by Joshua Van in his last 2 fights. He takes on Hyung Park, who had a nice finishing streak on the regional scene, becoming a champion, comes on road to the UFC, gets 2 finishes on road to the UFC, and then and after that in the UFC, he picks up 3 straight finishes, becomes one of flyweights best prospects, and on short notice, he takes on Tatsuro Taira in the main event, and just got submitted by Tatsuro Taira a couple of weeks back in August. The style of Bruno Silva, he's a bit of a twitchy striker. He's Bruno Silva, a lot of feints, very twitchy on the feet. He's actually got heavy hands for a flyweight, and he is pretty dangerous, but he does slow down quite fast. Yeah, Bruno Silva was once one of flyweight's best prospects. This twitchy guy on the feet, heavy hands, dangerous dude who's knocking everybody out. But we found out pretty quickly after the first round, he does tend to gas out. He's a good grappler too. He's got submission ability, but he's not like elite enough for the top. He's not like a Tatsuro Taira level of grappler. I don't think he's top 15 kind of level of grappling. He has got decent grappling, but nothing elite. Now, Hyung Park, elite, powerful pressure boxing. Wants to get you against the cage, rip to the body, land the big shots, and hopefully knock you out. He's also got really good pressure wrestling and submissions. We saw this perfectly against Carlos Hernandez. He backed him up against the cage with his boxing and eventually took him down, took the back, and choked out Carlos Hernandez. It's kind of still a norm to which level he's at because he hasn't beaten anybody good, as Hyung Park, and the only guy that he's lost to is Tatsuro Taira himself, so we still don't really know what level he's at, so I guess this fight will answer that question. And I'm going to go with Hyung Park by TKO in the third round. I'm still kind of, I don't want to say he's like a big prospect, but I still think Hyung Park's super talented. I mean, he lost to Taira, who's top 3 in the world on short notice. Apart from that, he's been smoking everybody. And I think Hyung Park's just better everywhere the fight goes. I think he outboxes Bruno Silva on the feet. I think he definitely takes him into later rounds, as works him later on, because like I said, Bruno Silva slows down. I think if anybody's going to get going with the grappling, it's going to be Hyung Park. I just think Hyung Park's better everywhere. I think he's more dangerous, more powerful, more dangerous on the ground as well. Better wrestling, better boxing. Maybe Bruno Silva's going to be tough to figure out because, like I said, outside of Tatsuro Taira, Hyung Park hasn't fought anybody on the same level as Bruno Silva. But you can say the same thing about Bruno Silva. I mean, he's the 2 step-up in competitions he has had, he's been smoked on the feet, so I can see Hyung Park having a lot of success, outboxing him, taking him down, mixing the striking with the grappling. In that third round when Bruno Silva's kind of on the way out, it shows that he's not really durable and he's a bit chinny, Bruno Silva, so I'm going to go with Hyung Park to chin him in the third. I think he gets that TKO finish, whether it's knocking him out or getting that ground and pound finish. I'm going to go with Hyung Park by TKO in the third round. Then we've got Kyle Nelson versus Matt Frevola. Now, Kyle Nelson, nice big run in the regional scene, becoming a champion, loses his first 2 fights by finishing the UFC, then picks up a finish himself, and since then he's been on a bit of a, I guess, a streaky run in the UFC, picked up 3 good wins and lost his most recent fight to Steve Garcia by finish. He takes on Matt Frevola, who used to be in the US military, but he goes on a nice undefeated run in the regional scene, gets a good finish on the Contender Series, and then goes 2-1 in his first 4 fights in the UFC, getting knocked out in his debut. He then loses to Aiemann and then gets knocked out in the shortest fight in lightweight history against Terrence McKinney. And then he gets a knockout, followed up by another knockout, followed up by another knockout, and now he's been brutally finished by Benoit Saint-Denis and Ferreziam, 2 Frenchmen back-to-back, brutally, emphasis on the brutal in his last 2 fights, as he takes on Kyle Nelson. Now, Kyle Nelson, there's not really much to break down, he's just meh. He's a meh level light, I think, yeah, he's a meh level lightweight now that he's moving up to lightweight. He's a solid kickboxer, he's decent on the feet, he throws weird punches, he's nothing crazy. There's nothing really unique about Kyle Nelson that I can break down, it's Kyle Nelson, solid kickboxer, you get what you're given. Matt Frevola, I feel like the perfect way to describe Matt Frevola is he's always in scrappy dogfights, but the chin doesn't match his style. Like the way he fights is like a Justin Gaethje, always in these scrappy styles swinging, but he hasn't got the chin for it because every time he gets caught by a big shot, he gets knocked out. He got chinned by BSD, chinned by Ferreziam. He's been chinned before as well. He's just clearly a powerful, explosive striker who's just too vulnerable. Kill or be killed. You catch him or he catches you first. It really depends. I'm going to go with Matt Frevola by TKO in the second. Matt Frevola should win this one. Kyle Nelson isn't anything crazy. He isn't anything crazy, he's Kyle Nelson. He's been beaten by the likes of Jai Herbert before as well. He hasn't really got any good wins in the UFC. He's just been finished by Steve Garcia. Now he's moving up a weight class against a guy who's arguably more dangerous than Steve Garcia. So I'm going to go Matt Frevola to win this one. Very powerful dude. He's lost to Ferreziam and BSD in his last 2. Those guys are both machines. I don't see Kyle Nelson really showing Matt Frevola anything he hasn't seen before. And I think Matt Frevola, he's going to chin him. I think he lands on Kyle Nelson pretty quickly in the first couple of rounds. And I'm going to go Matt Frevola by KO. I just feel like Matt Frevola, he's on a much completely different level to Kyle Nelson. Nelson hasn't really impressed me in the UFC so far. He's coming off a finished loss and moving up a weight class. The classic in the UFC. You lose at one weight class, the weight must be the issue. Let me move him to a different weight class. And then he gets chinned there as well. So I'm going to go Matt Frevola. Finish in the second round, knocks him out in the second. I just think he's a better striker, and he's been fighting at a high level too. Although the chin of Matt Frevola could be questionable, because like I said, he's fought twice. Well, his last 2 fights have been, what, September 2024 and November 2023. He's been chinned in both of them. So it's been a while since Frevola's picked up a win, but hopefully the inactivity is not going to be too much of a problem. I'm going to go for Frevola TKO in the second round. Then we've got Marlon Vera versus Aiemann Zahabi now. Aiemann Zahabi, good undefeated run in the regional scene. Every fight by finish, 100% first round finish rate. Comes over to the UFC, goes 1-2 in his first couple of fights. Ended up getting knocked out by Ricardo Ramos as well. And after that, he picked up a massive winning streak, getting 2 finishes in there as well. well, and notably beating Jose Aldo in his most recent fight for Aldo's last fight. He takes on Marlon Vera. Now, Marlon Vera might have the greatest chin in the UFC, and he's had multiple different characters that was unlocked over the years as Marlon Vera. One of the most playable character upgrades he's had out of everybody in the UFC. He's also had a massive run in the UFC in general as well. Notably fighting for the belt against O'Malley a few years back where he got the shit beaten out of him. Also notably knocked out Dominic Cruz, and he's lost his most recent fight to Davison Figueiredo last year. The style of Marlon Vera, he has one of the best chins in the UFC, and he's one of the most durable fighters in the UFC. That fight with O'Malley, we all know O'Malley to be this powerful elite striker. He got caught a lot and took a beating from Sean O'Malley, and he was still walking him down and looked dangerous in the 5th round. He's super vulnerable, great chin as well as Marlon Vera, one of the best attributes in the UFC. He's a great kicker as well as Marlon Vera. Obviously, we also chin Dominic Cruz, but he gets more dangerous progressively. People like to say about Marlon Vera, the later the fight is, the more fucked you are against Marlon Vera because he's so vulnerable, and he kind of gets dangerous as the fight goes on. He does clearly lack grappling though. We saw Corey Sandhagen take him down. We saw Davison Figueiredo take him down. We've seen people take him down before. He obviously lacks the grappling, and he also lacks against other elite strikers like Sean O'Malley. I mean, even Davison Figueiredo was able to drop him. He was a bit off balance, but yeah, he is lacking in a few areas. Now, Aiemann Zahabi, very crisp kickboxer. He's a pretty tricky kickboxer as well to figure out his Aiemann Zahabi. Good hands, good kicks, good durability, nothing crazy. I don't see him as an elite striker. I think he is in his late 30s as well, so I don't see him going too far, but I'm going to go with Aiemann Zahabi to win this one by decision. Yeah, Marlon Vera just hasn't really impressed me in his last couple of fights. He has kind of looked like the nail, like a punching bag in his last couple of fights, whereas Aiemann Zahabi, yes, he had that really close fight with Aldo, but I don't know, man. The momentum of Zahabi, I think, is going to get him through this. Like I said, Vera's not been looking good in this last few. Got the shit beaten out of him by Sean O'Malley. Apart from that 5th round body shot, didn't do anything in that fight. That fight with Figueiredo, he was a bit of a punching bag as well, and he got dropped by Figueiredo, even though you can say he was off balance. He got dominated by Sandhagen too. You put him against this guy with momentum on a winning streak who just beat Aldo in a dogfight. I'm going to go Zahabi to win this one. It is a very close fight. I do feel like they're both very evenly matched, but you look at even the wins of Marlon Vera. I mean, Pedro Munoz by decision. That's not impressive. Dominic Cruz, he was losing the fight to Dominic Cruz as well before he chinned him in those later rounds. So I'm going to go Zahabi by decision. I feel like Marlon Vera gets caught way too often, and I can just see Aiemann Zahabi taking advantage of that, kind of outputting him on the feet, outlanding him on the feet, especially in only a 3-round. I'm going to go with Zahabi by decision. I've not been impressed by Marlon Vera recently. He's been taking way too much damage. He hasn't fought for a year as well, so I'm going to go Zahabi by decision. Outstrikes Marlon Vera. I think Vera's going to have his moments. You know, this is definitely the biggest step up that Zahabi's got yet, but we're talking about a guy who's on a 2-fight losing streak, losing the 2 dominantly, and against a guy with a shit ton of momentum. So I'm going to go with Zahabi by decision. Outlands Marlon Vera, lands, like I said, more shots, gets the job done. And then we've got Manon Fiorot versus Jasmine Jourdain. Now, Manon Fiorot, good run on the regional scene, becoming a champion. Gets a big winning streak to kick off a UFC career as well, with 2 finishes in there as well. Fights for the belt, fights in the main event against Erin Blackfield, beats the shit out of Blackfield, and then fights for the belt against Shevchenko early this year, and lost to Valentina Shevchenko at UFC 315. And she takes on Jasmine Jourdain. Jasmine Jourdain scores 5-1 on the regional scene, comes from the Contender Series, picks up a win, ends up going 2-3 in a 3-2 in the first couple of fights in the UFC. Somehow loses to Tracy Cortez as well, which after her past couple of fights, I don't see how she did, because after that, she's now been on a winning streak with 3 finishes in there as well, 3 good finishes, beating on Djorden in a most recent fight. The style of Manon Fiorot, a super talented kickboxer, one of the quickest strikers at 125. Yeah, Fiorot is one of the best kickboxers, if not the best in this division right now. Super quick, super talented on the feet, but she does clearly struggle with the wrestling. I'm kind of basing it off the Shevchenko fight, because that is kind of the only real flow we've seen of Manon Fiorot, the grappling, but struggles with the wrestling, maybe the durability as well, but she's a really good kickboxer. Jasmine Jourdain, really effective chain wrestler and grappler. Yeah, her grappling is really talented. It's Jasmine Jourdain. Great takedowns, great submission ability. She is quite hittable on the feet. She doesn't really look to be elite on the feet. I mean, Tracy Cortez was landing on her, but she has got decent kickboxing herself. I'm going to go with Manon Fiorot to win this one, though. As much as I do think Jasmine Jourdain is the best hope for the next kind of Canadian title contender, I've got to go with Fiorot to win this one. Her only loss in the UFC is to fucking Shevchenko by decision. And in that fight, she had quite some success early on. Just because she's lost to Shevchenko, I'm not going to pick her to lose to Jasmine Jourdain too. And I think Fiorot's just, stylistically, this is quite a favourable fight. I can see Fiorot keeping this fight standing, even though that's a lot easier said than done when you're facing Jasmine. And I feel like this will be the first real big grappling test of Fiorot. But we've seen her against Erin Blackfield before as well. Blackfield's a heavy wrestler. She kept the fight standing and pinged her head across the canvas as well. So I can just see it being very similar to the Erin Blackfield fight, where Fiorot kind of you know, outlands and lands the bigger shots and just kind of whoops Jasmine Judovicius on the feet, keeps the fight standing, and like I said, just picks her apart across 15 minutes. So I'm going to go Fiorot by decision. As good as a grappler Jasmine is, this is a big step up, probably against the second best in the division right now. And like I said, unless she can take down Fiorot, which is a big if because she's a great grappler, I'm going to go with Fiorot by decision. I think her takedown offense will hold up. We saw it in the fight with Blankfield. We've seen her face more top contenders than Jasmine can even count. So I'm going to go with Fiorot to get this one done by decision. And then we've got Mike Malott versus Kevin Holland. Now, Kevin Holland, good big run on the regional scene, beating Jeff Neal, becoming a champion. Comes from the contender series. Goes 3-2 in his first 5 fights in the UFC, losing to Brendan Allen, one of them as well. Then gets 5 wins in 2020, which in modern history, he set the record for the most wins in modern history. 5 wins in a calendar year with 4 finishes as well. And then he's had 22 fights since 2020, making himself the most active fighter in the UFC. He's had notable wins over Anthony Hernandez, Vicente Luque, Joaquin Buckley, Santiago Ponzinibbio. Notable losses against JDM, Chimaev, De Ridder, MVP, and Stephen Thompson. So he's fought pretty much everybody. Super active. Now he's taking on Mike Malott. Mike Malott, decent run of the regional scene, becoming a champion, gets a good finish on the contender series, followed by a knockout in his UFC debut, a finish in his second fight in the UFC, a finish in his third fight in the UFC, and then there's a massive favourite, takes on Neil Magny, dominates him the entire fight, and then Magny finds a way to finish Mike Malott, literally in the last 10 seconds of their fight. Since then, he's now picked up a 2-fight winning streak, and he's just knocked out Charles Radke at UFC 315 in his most recent fight. The style of Kevin Holland, he's a hard-hitting, rangy kickboxer, specifically with the punches is Kevin Holland, but he hits very hard, especially at 170, very rangy kickboxer. His wrestling sucks. That's kind of what he's known for, is Kevin Holland is getting taken down. He has always kind of lacked the wrestling, but he has kind of got crafty submissions. He's picked up a couple of submissions, that one of them a Cal a few years back, and he's also in a couple of fights ago against Vicente Luque. Even though his pure wrestling might not be the best, his scrambling ability in his jiu-jitsu is actually quite good. And his gas tanking durability is also quite questionable. We just saw in his most recent fight against D-Rod, he was gone after the second round, so he obviously lacks the gas tank and the durability. Just Holland, that seems to be the biggest problem for him. Mike Malott, clearly hard hitting. He doesn't really have crazy striking though. Yeah, Mike Malott obviously hits hard. The way that he knocked out Mickey Gall, the way that he just knocked out Trevin Giles, he's obviously got power in his hands, but he doesn't look to be anything elite on the feet. He excels on the ground. He's got great wrestling and submission ability. He's, like I said, he's wrestling. His sub ability is where he's at his best. He lacks taking the fight to the mat and looking to deal damage with the ground and pound and look for submission, but he has got the heart of Anthony Smith. I mean, we saw in that fight with Neil Magny, just gave up in the last 30 seconds to let Magny finish him, which is a bit questionable when we're talking about the heart of Mike Malott. But I'm going to go with Mike Malott by sub in the first round. Yeah, Mike Malott is probably the Canada's best prospect right now. 4-0 in the UFC, well, 4-1 in the UFC in that one loss to Neil Magny, which is actually, even though he lost to Neil Magny, he was working Magny, especially on the ground, for most of that fight. After we've seen Magny in his last couple of fights, that's actually quite aged well, even though he lost. The way that he performed against Magny is edging quite well, and I just don't see Kevin Holland having some success. I think Malott's going to take him down and get the sub pretty early on. We've seen Holland historically struggle with wrestling. He doesn't really seem to be improving. I can see Malott kind of working him on the feet, taking him down, getting him into the ground and looking for a submission pretty early on. So I'm going to go with Mike Malott by sub in the first round. And I feel like Kevin Holland's just way too inconsistent. Like the 1 minute you think Holland's an easy underdog to pick against, he ends up getting a really good finish. He picks up some momentum. You then bet on Kevin Holland and he then loses his next fight. But yeah, I'm going to go with Mike Malott. We've seen Kevin Holland get taken down by De Ridder. We've seen him get taken down by Delizio. We've seen him get taken down countless times. We just saw him have a dogfight with Rodriguez, which he lost to. I think Mike Malott hits harder than Rodriguez, and I think he's a better grappler than Rodriguez. So I'm going to go with Mike Malott by sub in the first. Takes down Kevin Holland, picks up the submission. So I'm going to go Mike Malott by sub in the first. And then we've got the main event, Reiner De Ridder versus Brendan Allen. Unfortunately, it's not Anthony Hernandez. That was the fight I was looking and hoping for, but we've got Brendan Allen. It is what it is. Still a big fight for Reiner De Ridder. Anyway, Reiner De Ridder, nice undefeated run in the regional scene, becoming a champion. Goes over to 1FC and has a massive run in 1FC, becoming a double champion in 1FC, making a name for himself. Comes over to the UFC and he gets a submission win over Jourdain Mearshart in his UFC debut. Then finishes Kevin Holland. Then shuts down the prospect and fraud checks Bo Nickel. And just main evented against Robert Whittaker, picking up the win over Robert Whittaker in his most recent fight as he takes on Brendan Allen. Now, Brendan Allen, decent run of the regional scene, ended up losing to Fluffy Hernandez there and also becoming a champion. Gets a good finish on the contender series, picks up 3 wins in his first 3 fights in the UFC, 2 of them being by finish, 1 of them being at Kevin Holland. And then he faces Strickland, gets the shit beaten out of him by Sean Strickland, gets 2 more wins, a finish over Carl Robertson, then gets knocked out by Chris Curtis, picks up quite a big winning streak as well with a bunch of rear naked chokes. Main event against Paul Craig, finishes Paul Craig, main event against Chris Curtis, beats Chris Curtis, and then he loses to Imavov, loses to Fluffy Hernandez in his most recent recent fight, beating Marvin Vettori at UFC 318. The style of Reiner De Ridder, he's a clinch-heavy fighter. He wants to get you in the clinch and constant knees in the clinch, looking to take the fight down. Yeah, that's kind of what Reiner De Ridder wants to do. He wants to get you in the clinch and rough you up there. Good knees. We saw when he fought Bo Nickel, absolutely roughed him up in the clinch. He wants to take the fight down because he's got elite BJJ. We saw this in ONE FC and even in the UFC as well. Elite BJJ, elite grappling, submitted GM3, submitted Kevin Holland. He beat Whittaker mainly with the grappling too. He's got this weird jittery style on the feet as well. He's not like a conventional striker. He's not a great striker. He's a bit jittery on the feet, but he makes it work. He's kind of like a DDP. Weird looking fighter, but he makes it work. Now, Brendan Allen, rear naked choke artist. He's got some of the best rear naked chokes. I think at one point he held the record, or he came close to beating the record for like the most rear naked chokes in the middleweight division. He's got a shit ton of submissions by rear naked choke. He's a very talented submission grappler who lacks fight IQ. He's one of the best grapplers in this division, is Brendan Allen. Even in the fight with Fluffy Hernandez, he managed to take down Fluffy Hernandez and actually put him in bad positions, but the fight IQ of Brendan Allen is what lets him down. In fights where he should be taking people down, he's keeping the fight on the feet, and then there'll be times where he just gives up position on the ground as well to chase a submission, so he does lack the fight IQ, and he does have improved boxing. We saw in the fight with Marvin Vettori, he comes to throw on the feet, does Brendan Allen. And I'm going to go with Reiner De Ridder by TKO in the 4th round. I just think Brendan Allen's going to be one of these kind of like top 10 gatekeepers for the middleweight division, where Reiner De Ridder is a top contender. I'm going to go with Reiner De Ridder by TKO in the 4th round. I think he finishes Brendan Allen. I think as the fight progresses, it's only going to get worse for Allen. And I know we just had that war with Marvin Vettori, but if you go back to the fight with Imavov, kind of the story of Allen's career, looks good early on, fades as the fight goes on. And we're just seeing De Ridder in a 5-rounder against Robert Whittaker. So I'm going to go with De Ridder to win this one. I think if the fight does go to the ground, I think De Ridder's going to have a lot of success. I can see him getting, I'm not going to say he can pull off a submission over Allen because Allen's a talented grappler himself, but I can see him winning the positions over Brendan Allen, dealing a lot of damage on the ground as well with his ground and pound. And if the fight stays on the feet, I think it's going to be a clinch mania for Reiner De Ridder. Gets Brendan Allen in the clinch, roughs him up in the clinch, because Allen's hittable, man. Even in the fight with Vettori, even though he was tagging apart Vettori, he got caught a lot in that fight, even in the one with Imavov too. So it's not an easy fight for De Ridder stylistically, but on short notice, I'm going to pick him to win this one by TKO in the 4th round. Takes him into the later rounds, roughs him up at the clinch, deals damage on the feet, eventually takes him down and finishes him with the ground and pound. So I'm going to go Reiner De Ridder by TKO in the 4th round. But those are my picks for UFC Canada. Let me know your personal predictions, what you think about the picks I've made. Hopefully we don't have another fucking main event incorrect, because then we'll be on a 7-fight losing streak, but we'll have to see. Let me know your thoughts.